The Louisville football program has picked up 3 midweek transfer portal commitments.
You are Locked On Louisville, your daily podcast on the Louisville Cardinals. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Card Nation, what's going on, everyone? Welcome into this Thursday edition of the Locked On Louisville podcast. I'm your host, Dalton Pence. This is my 5th year covering the University of Louisville, 3rd year hosting this show. And I want to take the time to personally thank you all for making us your first listen of the day. Just a reminder, Locked On Louisville free and available on all streaming services 5 days a week, your team every day. Now, today's episode of the show is brought to you by the college football playoffs. The college football playoff is here. You don't want to miss a moment of the action. The college football playoff presented by Allstate begins with 4 first-round games December 20th and 21st on ESPN, ABC, TNT, and Max. The Louisville football program has picked up 3 midweek commitments out of the transfer portal. Florida international safety JoJo Evans, Abilene Christian defensive lineman Jerry Lawson, and Southeast Missouri offensive lineman Carter Guillaume. We'll break down what all 3 will bring to the Cardinals program. We'll discuss quarterback Pierce Clarkson entering the transfer portal. The fan base pretty frustrated, I feel like a good portion is. So we'll discuss that. And then we will preview the upcoming men's basketball game against Florida State. It's going to be a very key game for Pat Kelsey's team. We'll begin on the football side of things. We know that Jeff Brohm and company are working like madmen. A bunch of players on campus this week. Even when this episode gets released on Thursday evening, by the time you're listening to this, Louisville might have more than just 3 midweek commitments. But for this episode, there are 3 that we will discuss. The first is JoJo Evans, the safety from Florida International, 6'1" native of Riviera Beach, Florida. This past season, in his, I think, 5th season total in college football, he has played for 3 different schools. Started his career at Marshall in 2021, saw the field a good amount, then transferred to Kent State, had 83 total tackles in 2022. Florida International didn't get much run in 23, and then 2024 had his best year to date, 93 total tackles, 7 pass deflections, 1 forced fumble, and 2 interceptions. So he had a fantastic season for the Panthers. He's going to be a player at safety that will be able to, at the very least, compete for a spot on the depth chart. I think he's going to be meaningful depth. Will he compete for a starting safety spot? That is to be determined. It's going to depend on who the coaching staff brings in to compete for those spots. Right now, there aren't that many defensive commitments. I like the tackle numbers, 93 tackles. You can look at that one of 2 ways. Number one, opposing offenses had the ball a lot, which doesn't mean a lot of great things, but he was involved in a ton of plays. And the ability to just get involved in the run, I think Louisville is replacing safeties that made their mark defending the run. So it'll be nice, seeing Evans to be able to sort of slide in and play a rotational role. With any non-Power 5 transfers, the concerns are always going to be the same. Really, no matter who you're talking about, some more than others. But will insert player here be able to translate the skill set at the group of 5 or non-Power 4 to the Power 4 level and be able to be a standout? That's the question. Can a player, you did it at Florida International, like we're talking about JoJo in particular, but it applies for everyone. You played at this school, but can you do it at Louisville? And that's the question. I think one thing, when I went back and watched some Indiana game film, it looked like he had a little bit of a struggle closing the distance between him and the Indiana ball carriers, the speed getting to the line of scrimmage. And at times it seemed like he got washed out of the run fit at times. Now that's just one game, but that is against Power 4 competition. I think that Evans has the potential to be pretty solid in this scheme. Hopefully, he's going to be featured in the depth chart, and I would imagine that he's going to be. But nice to see a veteran defensive back join this program. I like his pursuit towards the football. I think he's underrated in coverage, a guy that's played a ton in the box, in center field. So that versatility is really going to help. So I like this addition for the Cardinals. The next one on the defensive side is Jerry Lawson, defensive lineman from Abilene Christian. His numbers were really solid. As a defensive lineman, 64 total tackles is pretty insane. He had 4.5 sacks from the interior, 6'2", 295 pounds. I don't really have a subscription to like any Louisville message boards, but someone sent me some screenshots to where apparently one of Lawson's former high school coaches made a comment that he played running back in high school and has gained over 50 pounds since leaving high school, and he still has that athleticism and strength. So I think that this is pretty interesting. This is one that I'm really watching in terms of additions because, I mean, the numbers here, 6'2", 295 pounds, having that athleticism. Will that non-power forward production be able to translate to the power forward? Now, defensive line, you have potentially Jordan Gerard coming back, Renee Conga. You have some guys that will be returning and some players that you also are trying to develop into being regular contributors. So I think that Lawson's not going to need to start right away. I think looking at the numbers here, I think he has 2 years of eligibility left. So if he's able to play his way into the 2 deep and then in 2026 potentially be a starter, I think that that is a home run, a grand slam out of the park for the Cardinals, because not only do you have to fill out your roster, but you've also got to give yourself some sense of continuity from 1 year to the next. And they're trying to do that with multiple year transfers. So you watch the film, and he obviously pops off the tape. I mean, really athletic in the middle of the defense. He has the potential, or he was at Abilene Christian for the Panthers. He was an every down defensive lineman. Is Abilene Christian, is their mascot the Panthers? I thought so. Am I wrong? No, it's not. It's the Wildcats. Sorry, the hardcore college sports fan fail to recognize a mascot. Somebody take some points off my score. But overall, this is a good rotational addition. Again, same thing with JoJo Evans. You have to wonder, is that non-power forward production going to translate to the Louisville level? We just won't know for sure. And I know that the Cardinals are going after a ton of non-power forward transfers at the moment, but that's something that we mentioned in 2022. In 2023, now we're talking about it in 2024. Every player that comes, even players that come from the power forward, like if they don't necessarily have the production, there's going to be some risks. And I think it just reiterates that, there's very few surefire stars in the portal that you'll get. Now, Louisville got one in Miller Moss, and I think they got another one with Nair Jackson. I'm a really huge fan of that commitment, and possibly Mac Pounders as well. But everyone has a little bit of risk. And just because I mentioned that doesn't mean that I don't believe in the player, but I want to have an honest dialogue about these players. The commitment that they got on Thursday afternoon, right before this recording, offensive lineman from Southeast Missouri, Carter Guillaume from Louisville, went to St. X High School, freshman All-American with SEMO. These stats courtesy of Matt McGavick of Louisville Sports Illustrated. In 707 pass block snaps and over 1,000 overall blocking snaps, he had no sacks and 10 pressures, led the FCS in pass block snaps. 6'2", 285 pounds. He did play guard for SEMO, for I think it's the Redhawks, right? The SEMO Redhawks. He could potentially slide into the guard spot at Louisville, but I think, and I saw someone mention this, I think he'd be a really good fit for the backup center role behind Pete Nigra, because right now behind Nigra, I'm trying to think of who else would slide into that. I know Vic Cutler had an injury early on in the year. He didn't really play. Austin Collins is more of a guard. So you need a potential center for the future. Now, Pete's likely going to be the center next year. But after Nigra, who's going to step in? And I think Gilliam could be one of the long-term solutions to be able to, say, okay, maybe he fills in at guard every now and again, but with 3 years of eligibility, this makes a lot of sense. I'm okay with having so many scholarship opportunities and openings. I think that, taking some guys that you feel like you can develop, I think is pretty good. So, again, same thing with Evans and Lawson. Can a non-Power 4 star translate his production to the Louisville level? That's something that we have to focus on. So, talked about the additions in the portal. Let's talk about a key departure. Pierce Clarkson announced on Wednesday. He's going into the portal. It felt like it was a decision that you could foresee coming, but a lot of the fan base is frustrated. And we'll explain why. We'll offer some rebuttals to the frustration when we come back on this Thursday edition of the Locked On Louisville podcast. It's that time of the year. The college football playoff is back with the newly expanded 12-team format. It's guaranteed to be larger and better than ever, bringing you all the hard-hitting and high-flying excitement that you love. TNT Sports coverage of the college football playoff begins December 21st, starting with the college football playoff kickoff show presented at 11 a.m. Eastern. Leading into our first matchup, the Southern Methodist University Mustangs battling the Penn State Nittany Lions. Then, the Clemson Tigers look to upset the Texas Longhorns in a showdown at 4 p.m. Eastern. Don't miss out on a moment of the action. Watch the college football playoff presented by Allstate live on TNT, True TV, TBS, and Max. Card Nation, thanks again for making us your first listen of the day. Just a reminder, Locked On Louisville, free and available on all streaming services 5 days a week. Your team every day. Just a heads up, at the moment, because we had the Sunday episode, this is, at the moment, going to be the final episode of the week. That's why we're previewing the men's basketball game for Saturday in the final segment. If a lot goes down and Louisville picks up multiple football commitments or something important happens, I'm not opposed to having a Friday episode as well. We'll just have to play it by ear. On Wednesday evening, some news that it felt like was coming for some time, but we just didn't know when it was going to happen, whether it was going to be before the bowl game, after the bowl game, after the spring game, or maybe even after next season. Well, that news ended up coming on Wednesday. Pierce Clarkson has entered the portal. Former 4-star prospect in the famous Flyville 23 class, was instrumental in putting together one of the best classes in program history. It's rough to see him enter the portal. It feels like it was pretty expected, but still that doesn't take away, just how disappointing it is. For starters, I do want to state how appreciative, not only myself, but I think I speak for the whole fan base when I say how appreciative I am and we are for Pierce and his role in putting that class together and being a huge ambassador for this program and university. He and his dad were instrumental in putting together one of the best recruiting classes in program history. Now, unfortunately, a lot of the Flyville 23 class is gone now outside of Stanquan Clark and Kataris Hicks, but, it is what it is. So I'm really appreciative of him making the decision to come here and all that he and his father have meant to this team in terms of, national recognition, momentum on the recruiting trail. The Clarksons will always be appreciated, in the city of Louisville and with this fan base. A lot of the fan base is frustrated. I feel like a good portion felt like Pierce didn't get his fair opportunity or a fair shot to be able to showcase his skills, to be able to show that he was QB1 of Louisville, and that Jeff Brohm continually just kept passing over Clarkson and others like Brady Allen. There were talks after Louisville added Tyler Shuck. There was some pushback on that. It's like, why is Pierce Clarkson not getting an opportunity? And then with Louisville adding Miller Moss, it's sort of more of the same. And I see both sides. My opinion sort of sits in one side that we'll bring up here shortly. But yeah, I mean, there are players that get overlooked and just find themselves lower down the depth chart. They don't really get a chance and they end up going to other places and they succeed. And I hope the very best for Pierce. I hope he goes somewhere and he shows out and has a great year next year and has a ton of success at his next stop. I really do. I don't know where that's going to be, but I wish him the very, very best, like I do with all the people that leave. I mean, wishing bad upon a player for transferring out, I mean, that's just not my style. Like I always, feel like if a player feels like he's making the best decision for himself, then who am I to tell him that he's wrong? I just wish that player the best of luck and move on. That's all you can do. So I understand the thought process of, well, how do you know if Pierce is good or not good if you don't give him a chance? Now, Pierce had some opportunities, not much. As a redshirt freshman, or as a freshman, one pass for one completion on 2 attempts for 7 yards. This year, 3 completions on 4 attempts for 11. Had 1 carry in 23 for 3 yards, 4 carries in 24 for 6 yards. So, excuse me. He wasn't the backup quarterback. The main backup was Harrison Bailey. So I understand that there's a lot of frustration because anytime a 4-star doesn't pan out, it sucks because there was a lot of high hopes for Clarkson, especially on the recruiting trail. People bring up Jordan Travis a ton with this. And I will say that for every Jordan Travis type player, for a guy that transfers out down the depth chart and goes to be a star at another good program, there's about 10 to 15 guys that don't have that level of success. It's the same thing with Russ Smith on the basketball side. Oh, well, this guy's a 2-star. Well, Russ Smith was a 2-star. But yeah, how many Russ Smiths have there been, right? For every Russ Smith, there's 32 stars that don't work out. Obviously, just taking a guess at that number. But you understand. What I will tell the fan base is this. I've heard a lot of praise for Jeff Brohm, the quarterback whisperer. There's been a lot of, well, if Brohm endorses this quarterback, I'm going to trust him. With Jack Plummer, with Tyler Shuck, insert player here. I will say that if you were wondering if Pierce Clarkson is a guy that can lead Louisville to a ton of success, put it this way. Jeff Brohm has seen the quarterbacks practice every day for Pierce and Brady Allen the past 2 years combined. It made sense why he would go with a veteran presence in 2023 heading into 2024 because both of the quarterbacks are still relatively young and inexperienced. But for him to do so again, I think that it suggests, it doesn't suggest, it literally highlights how Jeff Brohm views his quarterback room. Is that he felt the need to go out and get a transfer portal quarterback to be QB1 of the Louisville Cardinals next year. And it has some blowback from the fan base saying, well, why can't Brohm develop quarterbacks? Well, this is really his 3rd offseason. He's brought in 3 quarterbacks in the high school class. Pierce Clarkson, which there were rumors that, he wasn't really a Brohm quarterback anyway, sub-6 foot receiver with, not the strongest arm that as a dual threat doesn't really fit Brohm's, prototypical quarterback. And there were rumors that, Brohm wasn't sold on Clarkson beforehand. I can't really confirm nor deny those because I don't know. But you have Deuce Adams, who's going to be in his 2nd season, and I have high hopes for Deuce in the future. Mason Mims comes in as well. So I think we're too early in talking about developing quarterbacks. But look, this is tough to say because I wanted Pierce to work out. It just didn't work out, and that's okay. It happens. But if your take on the matter is, well, why can't we give Pierce Clarkson a shot? Jeff Brohm sees these guys every day. You don't. You're, for lack of better terms, star chasing. Everyone, put it this way, everyone wanted Pierce to be good. Everyone. There wasn't one person that didn't. If they did, shame on them. I desperately wanted Pierce to be the QB1 of Louisville for multiple seasons. Unfortunately, it just didn't pan out. Louisville has a very good quarterback next year. They've got good quarterbacks on the roster. I feel really, really encouraged about Deuce Adams for the future. So you can be frustrated. I am too. But see both sides of the argument here is all that I'm saying. When we come back, over to the basketball side, Louisville looking to bounce back off of the Kentucky loss when they take on Florida State on the road, beginning the large ACC schedule. We'll preview it when we come back on this Thursday edition of the Locked On Louisville podcast. Cardinal fans, it's early. We don't even have a line from FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, for the Louisville Florida State line because it is Thursday. It's not Saturday yet. But look, if you're on the fence, new customers can bet $5 and get $150 if you win that first $5 bet. When you go to the app, you'll see what I'm talking about, the convenience, the organization, etc. Makes it so easy to understand, makes it so easy to place live bets, which is what I've done on the NFL this season. And especially, we've got Saturday football, college football playoff. Man, it is a bettor's paradise. Visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win the first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch. Make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. And while I have you, I want to take the time to tell you about our friends over at Prize Picks. Prize Picks is the best place to get real money sports action with over 10 million members and billions of dollars in awarded winnings. Prize Picks has made daily fantasy sports accessible to all. You just pick more or less on at least 2 players for a shot to win up to 1,000 times your cash. If you join now, the holiday season, Prize Picks is giving away 2 free picks in December, and they're giving away $30+ million in rewards during Pixmas. Download the app today and use the code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 bet. Once again, download the app today. Use the code LOCKEDONCollege to get $50 off. To get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Prize Picks, run your game. Chat, this is a very important game on Saturday. I don't have to tell you all this. Louisville 6-5. They stayed afloat even despite the injuries, despite the strength of schedule through the out-of-conference slate. But as we go to conference play, I'm not writing the season off yet, but it's clear that Louisville desperately needs to create a winning streak. They have a chance to do it on Saturday. They're going to travel to Tallahassee to play Florida State at 2 p.m. It's on the CW network, which Louisville really hasn't had I feel like a ton of success when they played on the CW network, but maybe that's just me being too short-sighted, and I don't know. It is what it is. Louisville it feels like it just doesn't. There isn't much success on the CW network, but regardless, I'm not going to rant about that for too long. Louisville first road ACC game. They'll take on Florida State, who's 9-3, 0-1 in conference play. Florida State's strength of schedule is not like Louisville's. They played some teams, but not to Louisville's level of competition in terms of overall schedule. They have 3 losses. All are double-digit losses to Power 5 competition. Those are the only 3 Power 5 teams or Power 4 teams that Florida State has played. They lost at Florida by 13. They lost at LSU by 10 and lost at NC State by 10 as well. So 9-3, 0-1 in conference play. It's really hard to get a grasp on this Florida State team when you put the numbers by each other. This team in Louisville are pretty similar. Now, they both score in the high 70s. They allow, around 70 points a game. Field goal percentages a couple points off. Rebounding, Louisville actually out-rebounds Florida State. Their assist numbers are separated by 1 point or 1 point of assists. Florida State does block and steal. They block more shots and steal more passes than Louisville. But nonetheless, tougher strength of schedule for the Cardinals. When you look at this Florida State team, think of a vintage Leonard Hamilton team. Florida State has one contributor that plays regular minutes under 6'1". The rest are basically 6'4" and taller. When you think of a vintage Florida State team, you think of a team with a ton of athleticism, a ton of size. They don't shoot the ball well, but they get to the rim, they draw fouls, they defend really well. Like that pretty much describes almost every Leonard Hamilton team that I can think of, right? It definitely describes this year's team as well. I think that when you look at the spread, it's probably going to be close. I imagine Florida State is probably going to be a favorite by less than, I'm going to go out on a limb and say less than 5 points. The two players you have to focus on, leading scorer Jameer Watkins, 6'7", 19.1 points per game. He is the guy that makes that offense go in Tallahassee. Ended up transferring in from VCU ahead of last season, started all of the games last year, 15.6 points a game. He isn't shooting the ball well from three-point land, but does a good job of getting to the basket. A player, I think the main player that Louisville needs to focus on is Malik Ewan. 6'11", 230 pounds, 13 points per game, 7.7 rebounds per game as well. Really active around the basket. He also is a guy who defends well around the rim. Not a great free throw shooter, but one of the better shooters on the field in terms of overall field goal percentage. So you're going to see a ton of length, a ton of athleticism, a ton of defense. Looking at the numbers heading into Thursday's games, these are the numbers. They're 123rd in points per game, 78.4. Not a good three-point shooting team, 256th in the country. They're better than Louisville, but at this point, that's not really saying much. 31.9% from behind the arc. What I find very, very, very sad for Florida State, but very intriguing as an opponent, they're 10th in free throws attempted. Like, they get to the free throw line, but they're 192nd in free throws made. Like, they do not shoot well from the charity stripe, about 70% overall, which is not good whatsoever. They're top 30 in the country in steals per game and blocks per game. They force turnovers, and for a Louisville team that did well against Kentucky in this regard, but this season, the trend has been being careless with the basketball. For Louisville, I think that you have two keys here, two main keys. Number one, you have to take care of the basketball. Goes without saying. Number two, you have to stay out of foul trouble. You already have a short rotation. It's basically 7. You don't play Frank Anselm eBay a lot. Abubakar Traore isn't back. So you're basically got a 7-man rotation. This is a team that draws a lot of fouls. They get to the free throw line. One thing you can't do is put yourself in a situation where, like against Kentucky, you're battling foul trouble all game long. Like, James Scott has to be better with maintaining his fouls. Terrence Edwards can't get into foul trouble in this game. Like, Louisville has to do a good job of playing a clean game on both ends of the court. I'm going to predict a Louisville win. I think that Louisville gets it done. They get their first road victory of the year. Pat Kelsey picks up his first ACC win as Louisville's coach, and they're able to start, the process of trying to create a win streak. Again, going to be a very close game. That is going to wrap up this Thursday edition of the show, possibly the last show of the weekend, depending on what happens later on Thursday and maybe even on Friday. But everyone have a great day. If I don't talk to you then, have a great weekend. We'll see you back here very soon.